All right, Bob. A lot of people, when we talk about food, they think about food for energy, which
Yeah,
is
fuel, right?
super
Fuel.
important.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I and we also want people to think about food as containing information.
that's interesting. Do share, do tell, Dina. What are you talking about? Food is information. Listeners,
It
have you heard this
I
before?
know. What the heck? Yeah. Foods that we eat, Bob, can contain what we would call bioactives, which are these compounds that provide, it's like a signal, or it passes on some sort of activity in a pathway that can turn up or turn down action in the body, which ultimately may affect energy, but it's so much more than that, which
Mm.
it could tie to inflammation. It could tie to hormone detoxification, a whole bunch of cellular and metabolic pathways that, we could probably nerd on for a couple hours here. But I think given the time that we're releasing this episode, it being the fall season in the Northern Hemisphere and kind of a cool season of the year anyway, I thought it'd be fun to talk about powerful foods that pass on information that's so helpful to our bodies, either for health purposes or perhaps even in an athletic scope, helping us with recovery, the inflammation that we experience as we
Mm.
age, and a whole host of other things that sometimes we don't think about when we choose food.
Well, we don't, and I'll bring up a prime example with my work with collegiate athletes. Usually, it's when I have the food talk, which is all the time, right? It's oh well, how does this fuel my muscles? How does this support me
Yeah.
getting in the water? How does this support me on the court, on the on the ice or whatever? And it's funny because when I have the herbs and spices talk, because that's how I introduce this whole thing, just with herbs and spices, because it's a little bit it's quicker and it's easier to understand when you have like 5 minutes to talk to someone. And the amazing part of that, Dina, is to watch their faces light up. Like, can you see me? If you're on YouTube
Yeah.
watching us, I'm doing it right now. Like, what is he
Mm.
talking about? Like, you cinnamon does that? Spices do, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of and we've been talking about it for years, right? But it's what's fun about it is that it kind of takes that whole and again I use this analogy a lot with my younger athletes. I'm like, hey, when you grow up and your parents are like, hey, eat your fruits and vegetables, that kind of a thing, but you don't really know why you're eating your fruits and vegetables, and maybe your parents don't even know why they're telling you to eat your fruits and vegetables. Like these are some of the really important reasons to eat your colorful based foods, right? And it's more than just carbohydrates. It's more than just vitamins and minerals. And that's what you're
Yeah.
getting at is like, this is like, you cannot discount what colorful foods are providing us on the information highway. Because to your point, and I think I've said this in a recent podcast that we've done is, and you brought up inflammation, and that's such a buzzword for me and everything I do. But, so many chronic diseases start with inflammation, whether acute or chronic, that I feel like we need as much help from food as possible. And
Yeah.
that's where this episode comes into play, because you get to realize the power of some of these foods in helping. And listen, listeners, I'm only taking one little pathway, inflammation, very small pathway, right? It's very tiny compared to everything that's going on in your body, but you can make such a robust difference. And that's kind of how I look at this.
Just adding to that, sometimes the messaging, calories and the macros, like
Eh,
that's definitely an important piece when we think of nutrition and fueling the body. But just this emphasis, like I can eat 2,500 calories and can give me the energy that I need to subsist and get
yep.
through. But the quality of those 2,500 calories and this information that the foods that I choose to comprise those calories, that is what can level up our health and the long haul that we're all on. And
Yeah.
so that
Well,
that
in the
emphasis.
longevity. I mean, we think about
Yeah,
performance, but it really is, it's life performance too. It's not just sport
right.
performance, right? So, Dina, tell our listeners, tell us about some of these wonderful compounds in some of the foods we're going to discuss today, because, they're a mouthful. Some of them are a mouthful and they're very hard to
Ooh.
pronounce sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, listeners, hang in just for a minute because these are words you may not have heard before or compounds, but so appreciative. And then we're going to talk about foods, of course, and give some ideas. But yeah, I think of quercetin. You can think of classes too,
Hmm.
like the flavonoids or the flavanols, the anthocyanins. We've got our nitrates, our betalains. There's sulforaphane, which is another compound in some foods that we're going to talk about here that are fall season come to our radar more. So those are a few. I mean, there's a whole host
There's
of,
so many of them, yeah. And
yeah,
and I feel like some of our listeners are like, "Oh, yeah, I've heard of quercetin before. Oh, yeah. Oh, I
yeah.
take that supplement." So let's go off on a side tangent really quick and then come back
Okay. Yeah.
because I feel like some of our listeners, like, they identify with some of the words you just said because they take them in supplemental form. And
Oh,
we're
uh-huh.
not taught, this isn't the focus of
Yeah.
this episode, but I just have to put this out there because listeners, some of you are thinking, "Oh, yeah, wait a second. I take that, right?" What is your, just in brief, what is your take on, like, taking a quercetin supplement versus eating foods with quercetin in it?
Well, depending on your genetic picture, there is a time and a place for targeted supplementation. I tend to use the genetic data first to, and then align like that person's history, what they're looking to really optimize or fix, make better for themselves, and then figure out with their food pattern, Bob, are they getting enough or do they need more or less of a certain nutrient to upregulate or, tame down something in the body.
Yeah.
So I'm not anti like take a quercetin supplement. I think though you need to understand what it is and why you might need that before you just purchase all of the supplements.
And how do they know how to do this, D? And it's a one and done thing. So what is that thing that
Yeah.
that everyone should have? We promote this so much.
And you're talking about our nutrigenetic testing.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
It's so enlightening, Bob, because I mean, this is your genetic blueprint,
Hmm.
right? The genes don't lie. As Amanda Archibald always says, one time test. Yeah. So this is unique to each person, but it can reveal these areas where, again, when we talk about food and the power of food, the information in food, we can more accurately design food plans to work with your own gene picture as it's relevant for you.
Yeah, so we can get a better
Yeah.
idea of how your body, how the pathways are responding in inflammation pathways or oxidation pathways. And
Yeah.
and that helps us as dietitians to help really look at your nutrition and supplement planning, right? And that's kind of where the supplements can come in and say, okay, do we need some extra help here? Are foods enough? Are you going to eat those foods, which we'll get into here in a
Hmm.
second? So I just wanted to kind of put out there, yeah, time and place for supplements, absolutely. But just to have a whole, 20 bottles of supplements in your cabinet, not knowing why you're taking them, I don't think
Yeah.
that's the best idea, right? I think,
Right.
we should probably navigate the testing first, especially this is a one and done test, so economical too. It's not like it's thousands of dollars at all, but this is like a low hanging fruit for me.
Ooh, Bob, I'm going to try and not get hungry or drool while we're talking
Oh,
about some of these foods. But
seriously.
I mean, fall season is perfect to revisit some of the foods in your routine, change it up, right, for this season of the year.
Some of these, obviously, depending on where you live, they may or may not be available, but we've tried to focus some of our conversation here on foods that are more popular at this time of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, right? So
Yeah.
I think that aside, I think this is, again, it's the reasoning behind, oh, why should we eat more apples, right? It's just, it gives you a little more ammunition, but to know like why, if you really enjoy them, or I tell you, some of you listening will be like, oh man, I totally forgot about that. I do need to include that, right? I do that same
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes we're handcuffed because of seasonality with fruits and
Yeah.
vegetables, right? And I get that too. So yeah, let's just start.
Maybe we dive in with some fruits
Let's do fruits
in
first.
that
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
category.
Yeah.
I mean, you just mentioned apples. I am always amazed when I just take a moment, Bob, at the grocery store and look at the number of varieties of apples. But I
Oh,
mean,
it's
this is
amazing.
prime
Yeah.
time.
Oh yeah.
And there's the crunchier, the sweeter, the more tart.
Hmm.
But I mean, these apples that contain quercetin as one of their primary features. But I think of apples as being like, oh, wow, this is perfect time to experiment with different varieties.
It is. And I think I feel like a lot of people think apples are boring, right? Because you see
Yeah.
an apple in a dish wherever you're like, ah, okay. But then you see some blueberries, which are going out of season soon, and you're like, Oh, blueberries. Hold
Yeah.
on. I just think people discount apples. Like apples,
Yeah.
again, like you say, quercetin and some other compounds, and just super, super popular. But it's not like you just have to wash it and eat it. I mean, you
Right.
can, but like let's maybe get creative. Like
Yeah.
what else could you do with apples? I know a lot of people bake with apples, right? Or they
Yep.
do um like a little apple. What do you call that? Like a little apple bake. Put a little bit of cinnamon on top, which
Yep.
is another point that we'll talk about a little bit
Yes.
later. And you can put some nuts on top too. So like that's easy. And a lot of people do that I feel like when apples are not as ripe as they want them to be, right? They're a little
Mhm.
bit past their prime and that's when you pop them in the oven, right? You cut them
Yeah.
up first and stuff. But yeah, I think there's so many easy ways to do it. You could throw them in smoothies. I mean, not a lot of people actually put apples in smoothies, but why not, right?
Yeah, or in a slaw of some sort
Oh
with other
yeah.
maybe other root veg that you find
Mm-hmm.
seasonally, but that
Mm-hmm.
provides that crunch and maybe offsets some of the other flavors in a
Yeah.
slaw. I mean, you can incorporate apples into a vegetable dish for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, hang on a second. I just have an idea here that I want to talk to you about, dietitian to dietitian. So if we're thinking about a slaw, like a coleslaw, you said apples, and then my first thing that came to mind were jicama. I was like, oh my
Oh,
gosh, that would
yeah.
go really well with that too, kind of the
Yeah.
opposing crunch. What else would you
Yes.
put in slaw? Like based on everything we're talking about today. Like, so we've got apples, we've got jicama.
I love to put a little radish, which would
Oh,
be another
radishes.
great
Yeah.
find this time of the year.
Yep.
I like the
Maybe like a,
daikon radish
oh
or
yeah.
those,
Yeah.
what is that beautiful radish? Is it called a watermelon radish? I forget.
I'm
It's
not
a
quite sure.
beautiful pink
Yeah.
color inside.
Yeah, yeah.
But that is a fun addition. I mean, I do like parsnip,
Mhm.
turnip kind of deal
Yeah,
in
yeah.
there. So you get a little, I mean, it's kind of like a whole bunch of white stuff crunched
Yeah,
up in there. But I mean, it
yeah,
can just provide those different textures
yeah,
and that consistency that's, I guess, on the palate kind of
yeah.
pleasing.
You can also throw some beets in there if you want it colorful. Like, you can do
Oh,
either red beets
that's
or
another
golden
one.
beets. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And even things like pomegranates, right, to kinda give it color.
Yes.
So, I mean, my point with bringing that up is there are so many things you can put in a slaw, which
Yeah.
also kinda doubles as, in my world, that's a salad because a salad
Right.
doesn't always have to be lettuce-based, right? So
Exactly.
so looking at that, okay, so back to apples, let's go back to apples. So we've got smoothie, we've
Well,
got slaw, we've got baking them. Yeah.
and then you were kinda expanding already on a couple other fruits that would be prime time this season, like the
Oh,
pomegranate is another
yeah.
perfect one to think about.
So frustrating, but so great.
I see it as a fun, diversion
Oh,
from my day
wow.
is to t
Okay.
take apart those things.
If you did not put diversion in there, I would think you're cuckoo because it's definitely a diversion. Fun, maybe not, but a diversion, absolutely.
Okay, I'm one of the nerds that loves to tackle a pomegranate.
No, but pomegranates are great because they go.
Yeah,
You can do just about anything with those. I mean, honestly, you can. I feel like they go well on top of things, right?
yeah.
Even some meats, like I put them on top of meats before and put them
Okay,
in
yeah,
little like salsas before.
yeah.
So that is super easy to do, and you can even use like I know Amanda, our friend from Genomic Kitchen, is big on this too, but using like the tops of veggies like carrot tops and stuff, the greens, and
Yes.
using that as part of like a salsa. But pomegranates can belong in these things because it kind of adds that sweet.
Oh, yeah. I love the
Yeah.
idea of pomegranate in a salsa. That's a
It's
great
so
one.
good. It's
I
so
also
good.
think for those of us who may consume alcoholic beverages, but
Mm.
know that that is not always the best idea, or maybe never the best idea, is the mocktail with like a
Oh yeah.
little splash of palm
Yep. Yep.
juice, or throwing a couple of those arils, the pomegranate
Mm-hmm.
seeds
Yep.
in, and then, it's kind of infusing your water, for example.
Yeah.
But you can
That's a
come
good.
up with all kind of mocktails with some palm
Yeah.
juice.
Yeah, that's actually a good point, D. Off on a tangent, but it's kind of very related to this. Is during the winter, a lot of athletes become dehydrated because they just get out of their routine, right? Because
Yeah.
they're not training anymore, not training as much. So that's a
Yeah.
great way to flavor water. Because I feel like that's one of my complaints that I hear from a lot of athletes is how do I just what else can I drink? Because they're just
Yeah.
so sick of plain water. So that's a great idea. Yeah, I also like it. Like I feel like yogurt parfaits are super popular, at least in my world, because they're quick and easy.
Yeah.
Simple to put some pomegranate seeds on top of a yogurt parfait.
Bob, another colorful fruit here in our category, maybe a little more tart is
Yeah.
the cranberry.
Oh, yes.
So,
Yes.
and similar compounds like
Yep.
pomegranate and cranberry,
Yep.
but I think that's a stumper for some people. Cause I mean, the immediate thought for those of us in the USA is like cranberry sauce at Thanksgiving,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yep.
gets usually a whole bunch of added sugar
Yep.
because you can't handle the tart.
Yeah.
So, what other ideas for cranberry besides our Thanksgiving dinner and that
Well, it
cranberries?
is a tough one because that's exactly where my brain goes. And I'll usually like I've made cranberries for like Thanksgiving stuff with like coconut sugar before, and just reduce it by half than what you would normally do. But it is a
Yeah,
tough one. Now I'm going to tell you, I love the tartness of cranberries, so I
me
don't need
too.
any type of sugar in
Me
there. So
too.
I kind of feel like you just need to balance it a little bit. So if you have, and I've done this before, like you can put it in some oatmeal, like you can put them in oatmeal if you want, if it's more of a
Yeah.
sweet based oatmeal. So there are ways to use it. I feel like salads or like cooked products are probably better. You can also, if you are a baker, you can put it in baked goods too,
Yes. I
right?
was just thinking like a power muffin,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
got a
yeah.
lot of yummies in there and, it's like healthified. I'm wondering other fruits we want to mention before we move to veg. Pears maybe could be another
Yeah.
one this time of
Pears are kind of
year.
the unsung hero, I think. I think in
Yeah.
my mind too, I'm like, yeah, I like pears, but I never think about pears, right?
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh, it's
Well,
a pear. Yeah.
sometimes they're like avocados where you at the store, like it's hard
Yeah.
as a rock and it's going to take
Yes.
a few days. And then if you got to
Exactly.
pay attention,
And
but
you do
those
have to
are
pay attention.
really delicious and nutritious as well in terms of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
compounds. So I would,
And
I
you
would
can
add
use
pears.
them, yeah, you can use them similar to apples if you don't want the crunch, right? So you can like dice
Yep.
apples, like I've done this before, dice apples, put it on top of a yogurt parfait or like an oatmeal for that texture, that crunch. Pears don't give you that crunch, but they give you the sweet. So maybe
Yeah.
instead of adding a sweetener to something, you can actually add pear to it, or you can puree pear, and you know what I mean? So there's so
Yes.
many, I think even just I mean, either having a good power blender or having like a food processor is perfect because then you can take a lot of these things. And I'll do that once they start to get towards the end of their life. And I'm like, oh, what do I do with this? And obviously smoothie you can easily do, but you can make a puree out of these things and put them in muffins or we do that with bananas all the time. If you make
Yeah.
muffins, you can use that as a moisture agent.
Well, what about some veg here that we would say is a great addition or inclusion in our fall food repertoire?
Yeah, I think this is a tough one for a lot of people because if you look at most, and of course, I'm totally generalizing, most people really prefer the sweet of the fruits, right? Whereas vegetables, they're a little bit more intimidating. But, I think one of my favorite things, honestly, is cabbage. Like I love
Yeah.
cabbage, and we've got red cabbage, we've got green cabbage. So again, kind of color of the rainbow when it comes to cabbage. But people are like, oh, what do I do with cabbage? And, I actually love the old school where you cook it and, you
Yeah.
could boil it and it's just like that just wonderfully soft leaf and you season it with great herbs and spices. Like I just love that type of cabbage. But again, that could be the base of slaw, like we talked about
Slaw.
earlier,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
super easy. But I think a lot of people are intimidated by cabbage. I'll use it a lot in salads to either um, either help the other lettuces, so maybe some arugula or kale or spinach, but just to add some variety and knowing that you are using like that's the thing. We want variety of these things, especially this time of the year, because we want to
Yeah.
rely on these different bioactives from all these plant compounds. So those are a couple things the way I use cabbage, but that's one of my favorites.
Bob, I literally just bought a head of red cabbage that's in
Oh
my
yeah.
fridge right now, and I love it on tacos or taco
Oh
bowls,
yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
little
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
top. But yeah, even just sauteing some olive oil and garlic, like, yeah, you can
Yes.
just keep it simple.
The easy ones that are usually in season year round. I mean, those are the ones that we don't usually talk about because they're pretty year round, but like spinach and kale and onions,
Yeah.
those are still very, very powerful in terms of bioactives. They usually don't get highlighted because we can literally find them almost every day of the year in good amounts for the most part.
I was thinking of that purple in the red cabbage or the purple
Oh, yeah.
cabbage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the red reminded me of beets. And so here's where
Yes.
some listeners are going to be like, no, don't talk about
No.
beets. They taste like
Oh.
dirt. There are ways to make the dirt taste much less, like if you put some wedges of orange or some fill in the
Hmm.
blank citrus food. But I don't think people should give up on beets. Do you have that gene, Bob, that
Mm-mm.
taste? Okay.
Mm-mm.
Well,
What are
I
you talking
think
about? The bitter taste or the
yeah, do you
earthy
have that?
taste Oh, I
The
do
t
have that, yeah, because kale gets
Yeah,
me. I love kale, but I really
you
don't
have
love
to
kale.
you have to really work with it. Yeah, I think
I work with spicing it up and stuff, yeah.
yeah, so beets, aren't for everyone, sometimes genetically based, but we can dress them up and complement to make
Yeah,
them easier to
yeah.
consume. But this
I
is
mean,
another one, right, Bob, where you can sneak it in a smoothie.
and this is like a lot of athletes take beet powder, Dina. Like
Yeah.
seriously, like okay, yes, it takes a lot. You're gonna have to eat a lot of beets to get the same power that you'll get from a dried beet powder. Yes, we get that, right, dosage wise. But I
Yes.
don't know. I don't know the thing about beets, D. Like I think they're just a cousin to carrots. Like I literally just
Yeah.
peel them, dice them
You
up
could
like a
yeah.
carrot, eat them like by themselves. I literally in my brain, I literally think they are a purple carrot.
Nice.
If you're
Well,
doing a
that's
red beet.
awesome.
Now golden beets I feel like are a little less
Ooh.
intimidating, right?
Yeah, the golden
Yeah.
beets.
Yeah,
Those are
because then
delicious.
you don't see that purple. You're not like, oh my God, that's intimidating, right? Golden beets
Yeah,
are a lot easier to work with, and then they don't stain your fingers and all that stuff.
that part too.
Yeah.
And roasting beets
Oh
are
my gosh.
pretty I mean, it's kinda like the pomegranate if you're
Yeah.
gonna get down and dirty with the,
Yeah.
peeling and all that stuff, but
Yeah. Yeah.
I think roasted beets, that brings out a totally different flavor profile. There's a whole lot of options. Drizzling some balsamic glaze or, balsamic vinegar, or if you're a cheese consumer, maybe there's a goat cheese or a feta or
Hmm.
something on top, but that's like a whole new world for some people.
I know. Well, let's just go back to smoothies real quick because you said it, but it was really quick. Like that, smoothies are my favorite thing in the whole world, I think. But it's so easy to put beets in smoothies, and people are like, oh my God, why would you do that? Why? I love pairing like red beets with blueberries because
Yeah.
you literally, one, you don't know what's in there because
Yeah.
the color is like, it's a very vibrant color, but it doesn't trick your mind. I feel like sometimes if we see that vibrant color of a red beet in like a smoothie, we're like, oh no, something's not right. But if you're putting some blueberries in there, right, it kind of balances
Yeah.
that out, and it's
Yeah.
actually you don't have that earthy taste when you put in a smoothie. I mean, depending on how you're making the smoothie, and of course, reference our smoothie book that we've done together. So that can be found on the Energy Performance website. So pick that up because we've got a few different beet smoothie recipes in there that we've
That's
created.
true. We're not talking too much on the squashes, but those winter
Mm,
squash
yeah,
are a whole other set of foods that you can do a lot of like comfort food type of feel,
yeah,
like stuffed acorn squash or the
yeah,
spaghetti squash, the
mm,
butternut and soups
mm,
and things like this. So, uh,
yeah,
those are terrific and have a set of carotenoids, beta carotene, some of those compounds that, you see with the oranges and the deep yellow colors.
yeah. The only thing I think about is crock pot or Instapot. That like, literally, that's
Yeah.
my go-to in the fall
Yeah.
and winter is like, wow, how do I just put all these great veggies in there with a great protein
Hmm.
source and just simmer because then it just brings out all those flavors and you add the herbs and spices. Oh my gosh, that's probably
Yeah.
because a lot of people are also intimidated by squash. They're like, what the heck do I do with a squash? Right? I don't know
Yeah.
what to do with this.
Yeah. I know.
You can also make a good soup out of it too.
True. I
Yeah.
think we shouldn't neglect one other category, Bob. Spices,
Oh my
herbs. We
gosh, my
hinted
fave.
on the
Yeah.
cinnamon earlier, and you brought that up earlier in our
Yeah.
conversation. But this season, and even thinking of warm beverages, teas,
Yes.
maybe you're a hot cocoa person,
Hmm.
all those kinds of things, or your golden milk. We've got our ginger and turmeric, our cinnamon,
I
cloves.
love pumpkin pie spice. I mean, they're doing it for you, putting all these great spices together. I just love that flavor sometimes, especially if you're
Yes.
gonna do like a hot cocoa or something. I'll put that in smoothies, not all of them because it needs to be a certain flavor profile, but it goes like spices go so easy in smoothies, especially when we're talking about cinnamon and ginger and like pumpkin pie
Yeah.
spice and even cloves. I'll put a nice some anise in there sometimes too. So
Yep.
it's so easy to use these fall spices and herbs. Oh my gosh, yeah. And you may
Yeah.
use them normally, which is great too. But just maybe increase the options that you have because there are so many other dishes you can make. So here's the thing, like when you're using herbs and spices and you think of fall herbs and spices, you should be thinking about these fall foods that we're talking about, right? And how to
Yes,
pair these. And that's why we're bringing up these specific examples, because a lot of them pair really well with these herbs and spices that we just brought up. And obviously there's a
totally.
million ways to put these together, right? But
Yeah.
that's based on your taste preferences.
Bob, I think we should each plop over one of our favorite fall food recipes in our
Yeah.
Patreon community for our level
Would
members
love to do that.
over
Yes.
there, because I know we could each choose from 100 different
Yeah,
recipes, but let's
for
pick
sure.
one to plop over there.
Yeah.
Would be good. Are there any others you want to mention?
I think the big things, let's just not forget about extra virgin olive oil, right? It
Oh,
has
yes,
so many great
yes.
polyphenols, and it's not we don't think about that as a food or a spice. Like it's kind of that,
Yeah,
where does that fit? But I mean, that's like such a staple in my cooking. I think we go through so many bottles, it's not even funny. But just remember, like a good Evo is so 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 important, especially when it comes to what we're talking about today with all the great polyphenols and plant compounds. And it
yeah.
actually has this wonderful compound, because I just wrote an article about this, D, on my weekly newsletter. It's called hydroxytyrosol. So hydroxytyrosol is the compound that is found in olive oil, that really does a lot of these special things that we're talking about in terms of signaling different genes. So
Hmm.
Evo is phenomenal.
Well, hopefully, listeners, you're hearing like, wow, these are a lot of yummy foods, but also then appreciating maybe in a new light that these yummy foods or food combinations also provide powerful information to our bodies, to our cells, to be supportive in one way or another. If you really want to learn more about that, of course, you can reach out to Bob or myself to learn your genetic blueprint to see like which foods do you actually maybe need more of or how to enhance your health through your genetic information and all these awesome foods that we're talking about. But I think ultimately is taking the step forward to include one or more of these foods we've talked about in your fall food routine, and let us know how it goes for you over in our Patreon community. We'd love to hear one of your recipes as well.
Oh, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? Collect that in our
Yeah.
free community. If you all can post just one way you use one of these fall foods or spices or Evo, that would be
Yes,
amazing. So we can kind of see what you
totally.
guys are doing. It gives us, and it kind of builds everyone. It gives everyone different ideas, because I feel like
Yeah.
we get stuck sometimes with these things.
Bob, I was going to say, I'm going to try not to overeat at my lunch because we've been talking about all these yummy foods and the
Yeah.
appetite has ticked up a little bit. But I'm excited to look at these foods for myself going into the fall season now. With that, we will wrap up this episode. Thank you so much, Bob, for all your great tips here. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to this episode. And we'll catch you on the next one.